This is the Microsoft Cloud Show, episode 120. In this episode, CJ and I are going to talk about Docker Machine on Azure, the new Docker for Windows and Mac beta, Mesosphere investment by Microsoft, some updates by the Google Cloud Platform and bringing on another partner, and Office 365 connectors, as well as looking forward to the Build conference later this week. Recorded live March 29th, 2016. Welcome to the Microsoft Cloud Show, the only place to stay up to date on everything going on in the Microsoft Cloud world, including Windows Azure, Office 365, SharePoint, Exchange, Lync, and related technologies. Just the information, no marketing, no BS. I'm Andrew Connell.
And I'm Chris Johnson.
And we're just two dudes telling you how we see it. The Microsoft Cloud Show is sponsored by Valid NL. Valid is a Microsoft Gold partner whose mission is to enable its customers to excel in their business through the innovative use of technology. Valid is always on the lookout for consultants, architects, and engineers. Do you know Azure, Business Intelligence and Analytics, .NET, Office 365, or SharePoint? Look them up on valid.nl. Good morning, CJ. How are you doing today?
I am awesome.
Awesome. Is everything awesome?
Everything is awesome.
What's so awesome? What's going on with you? What's so awesome?
I don't know. I'm just feeling good.
Oh, that's good.
Sun's out, beautiful day. Heading to San Francisco for Build this week.
Ah.
Got a ton done at work. Feeling good.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Build towards the end of the show here, but that's cool. Was that a good weekend?
Yep, it was nice. Bit of Easter shenanigans and fun with the kids, and much fun was had. So it was a great time. How about you? Oh, man, I just came back from my very first ski and snow vacation with the family. You guys blew my mind. Like, as a family from Florida, I don't know if, well, you'd seen snow before. I don't know if any of the rest of your family had or not, but to book a family vacation for like a week in the snow, that's ballsy, man.
Yeah, we've been wanting to do this for a while. So we had cashed in some points and took the wife and kids. I've got an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old, 11-year-old boy, 6-year-old girl. We went to Park City, Utah, and we stayed in a resort and skied primarily in the an area called the Canyons, which is like right next door to Park City. Actually, all the resorts are connected. But my son snowboarded, I snowboarded, my wife and my daughter skied, and we were there for 4 total days. The kids did ski school 3 days. We were only going to do it for 2 days, but they loved it so much they wanted to get more. We're like, you know what? Let's just feed this see if they really enjoy it. So we did it for them for 3 days, took 1 day off to go tubing. My wife and I did 1 day of group lesson. And then we thought that the next day we'd be cool to kind of go out on our own and, at least just do enough to where we could get down the mountain on our own.
Yeah.
And the second day, man, it was a little bit warmer. Everything was icy. And we both made a mistake of not going on a bigger run and being more on like the little kiddie hill, but it was too narrow and too short. So you couldn't really do much maneuvering. I fell so many times trying to snowboard on my own with no help. And my knees were just getting destroyed. And they're still both black and blue, but we took a day off. My wife and I were both like, I don't really know if this sport's for us. But we went back, and on Friday or Saturday, this past Saturday, she did a private half-day lesson, and I planned on doing a private half-day lesson in the afternoon. But while she was out in the morning, I went up to one of those smaller runs, but at least really nice and wide. And I watched some videos on YouTube the night before. It gave me a different way to explain things that my instructor had given it to me. But it all kind of started coming together on Friday night. And man, I felt like I got it. Went up, started doing green runs by myself, came down at lunchtime, canceled my private lesson, and then just started going. I mean, I'm by far no expert. I'm not doing a good job at all of people who know what I'm talking about here, connecting my turns. But I can start at the top of the mountain and I can point downhill a bunch. I can turn from left to right. Can't connect it the other way around, but at least I can grind all the way down if I have to. But oh my God, it's fun, man. I get why you guys love it.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys had a great time, and we'll try to get you up there again, and maybe we'll come along this time.
Oh man, I'd love to. Now that I know that how close it is for you guys in Seattle, just adding an extra day to these business trips that I have out to Redmond during the winter.
Punch out a few runs. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
we'll get you like dropping into some double blacks in no time.
Hey, here's the crazy thing. I've only done greens. The instructor for my daughter, 6-year-old little girl, took her up on blues. When I went and picked up my son, I had done 2 greens. I come down to my son and I'm like, hey, and you're done for school. How was the day? He goes, great. He's like, I did a green. And I'm like, no kidding. They took you down greens? He goes, yeah. How many times did you do it? He goes, about 10 or 15 times. And his instructor looks over and nods like, yeah. And I'm like, my wife and I looked at each other with like deer in our headlights. We're like, I can barely get down at once. So
blues are a weird thing because like I definitely push newbies to blues because I actually think you'll find it easier than greens because you've got more edge to work with. But anyway.
Yeah, that's what somebody was saying, that and the fact that there's a lot of people who are falling and stuff on greens, so you're trying to avoid them. And then there's a couple level spots that I wasn't going fast enough and I ended up just getting stuck, and it's just like trying to shimmy across. So
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Still all good. I had a great time.
Nice work. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Had a good time. So, hey, this week it's going to be a bit of a shorter episode, but our plan is at the moment to barrage everyone with a bunch of shorter episodes because we've got a big event this week, which is the Build Conference in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I will first tell you what our goal is, but then we'll come back and we'll talk about it, Build in a little bit more. But CJ and I, our goal is we're recording this on Tuesday, March the 29th. Build starts on Wednesday, tomorrow, March the 30th, and goes through Friday. So for 3 days. And our goal is for at least the first 2 days is to record a quick little news recap of what was announced at Build and ship it the next day. Hopefully the next day we get our producer's got it. He says he can do it for us, and I have full confidence he can, but I mean, it's still it's a big ask of us for him to turn around 24 hours. So we'll do what we can. But the idea is to give you at least just, a quick little, here's the news. And then later, CJ and I will also follow up with additional episodes where we talk a lot more about each one of the different topics that were announced and discussed at Build. So if there's anything specifically interesting you're interested in, definitely reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun. The updates are going to be probably fairly short. Like we're not going to go in great depth on each of the updates, but we're just going to sort of recap the news, talk a bit about the most interesting things that came out for that particular day and what it means for people. We're expecting a lot of great news in the cloud space, obviously, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah. So at the end, CJ and I'll have what we're hoping to see and stuff. And it's interesting for this build is actually interesting for me because for the first time, I actually don't know of a lot of the stuff. I don't know of many things. Usually you know of a few things that are coming. Yeah. But I know of a very, very little things that are going to be announced this week. So at any rate, we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's first let's look backwards for a bit. Let's talk about some of the news that's hit us over the last week and a half, which, I mean, there's been a bunch of news here. You want to kick us off with, I don't know, one of our favorite topics, Docker lately.
Yeah, sounds good. So there was some news this week that Mesosphere is raising some money, a $73.5 million round. And there's a couple of interesting people that are investing. So HP Enterprise led the round, but Microsoft was also included. Now, this is really interesting because, a few shows ago, we talked to Ross Gardler from Microsoft, who's working on the Azure Container Service. And Azure Container Service is very heavily dependent on tools like Mesosphere or Mesos from Mesosphere to run containers in their cloud. So in Azure, you spin up an ACS set of machines using ACS, and you could choose to either use a Swarm cluster from Docker or a Mesos cluster it's an Apache Mesos cluster. And so I think they need to be really nicely, closely aligned and very joined at the hip. And I think this investment is a sign of that. It wouldn't surprise me if Microsoft bought Mesosphere or something like that. Eventually, sometimes they'll invest in a startup first, see how it goes, help them along, and then at some point buy them to sort of integrate them in Azure, I guess. Like how this could be the beginnings of container as a service if you play out the story, sort of 5 years down the line. It could form the basis of a proper container as a service for Azure.
Yeah, so Mesosphere is from the Apache Foundation, and it's not. I mean, it's a free thing that we can go get, and they refer to it as a DCOS or a data center operating system. And I know we talked a little bit about it in the past, but just again for everybody to remember is that this is essentially a bit of software that runs over all of your nodes where you're going to be hosting Docker containers. And it allows you to have a centralized view of how much CPU am I using, how much memory am I using, how much disk am I using, but as a comprehensive view across your entire cluster. And then it also allows you to dig a little bit deeper too, to see what's particular nodes, where if you need to add a node or remove a node and those kinds of things. Yeah. I don't know if Microsoft buying it would be kind of interesting, but I love the idea of them pumping a lot of investment into Mesosphere and having it, in a sense, it's kind of Microsoft's option of Microsoft's like competitor to what like Google's project of Kubernetes. So like Kubernetes runs the Google Container Engine. And on the Azure side, we don't have a specific one. We support Swarm, which is a cluster management thing. Docker Cloud is something that helps automate the deployment of that in different hosts. So Mesosphere would be a cool way, another cool option to really kind of go, head to head with something like Kubernetes. So it's I know it's a hot space.
Yeah, so. It's a little just so we're 100% clear. Like Apache Mesos is an open source tool, but Mesosphere is a startup, right? So Microsoft are investing in the startup,
right,
that build a set of tools, including a tool called Marathon, which helps you manage containers on top of Mesos. So just so we're 100% clear, they're not investing in the Apache project directly, but Mesosphere is the startup that's raising the money and investing in. And I think it's great for Azure because they're going to be able to get more features that they need, in Mesosphere to help people manage containers on Docker. On Docker on Azure.
It's cool. I mean, we're seeing, you and I talked about it, that this orchestration piece of containers is where we see a lot of the growth and a lot of the investment and innovation going on this year between, the big guys, between Kubernetes, which is, again, that's Google started, but open source project, and it's what runs the Google engine, or the Google Container Engine. You can run it on-prem if you want yourself. Same thing, Mesosphere, same deal with their own. And you also then got the combination of Swarm and Docker Cloud. So these guys are rapidly innovating and investing in stuff, and they're trying to beat each other out. And they've got articles coming left and right on who's faster, who's better. So it'll be, it's cool. It's very cool to see, the pedal's still on the metal.
Oh, yeah.
So
that'll be interesting. Good to see investment in this space.
Absolutely. And we saw a little bit, actually, I thought it was a huge announcement around a little beta thing around Docker 2 that we picked up on this week here.
Yeah. Should we dive into that now? More Docker goodness?
Yeah. Why don't you handle our Docker side? I'll handle a little bit of Google side in a minute.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that happened with Docker. One was an announcement around a new Docker Machine app for Azure. So Docker Machine is a command line interface application that you can use for during development, spinning up a machine, a Docker node, and deploying containers to it. And so Azure actually have native integration in the Docker Machine CLI so that you can provision a Docker node in Azure from the Docker Machine command line interface really easily and straightforward. So it's all, it's easy to start up a VM and get the right stuff installed on it and get it up and running. So if you're thinking about playing around with it in Azure, then I definitely take a look at Docker Machine. This has been in there for a while. But what they've done now is moved it to use the new ARM template stuff, so the Azure Resource Manager APIs. And that means there's a bit more, modernness to it, I guess. And you get more flexibility around things like resource groups and all that sort of stuff. So that's a nice little improvement. And then the second announcement that they've made is around a new Docker native application for Windows and Mac. And what this means is, currently, getting started with Docker on your machine as a developer, it's still a little bit finicky. There's multiple things you've got to install. Docker have done a pretty good job of wrapping it up, but it's still a bit of a hodgepodge of tools. Things like VirtualBox to get your virtual machines up and running, to run your Docker containers on, things like that. But anyway, so now what they've done is come out with a new Docker install for Mac and Windows, which encapsulates all that stuff for you. So you don't need to go and install VirtualBox or some other virtual machine technology. It all installs as part of, or they've got integrated virtualization technology in the Docker install for the Windows or Mac box that you might have. So it just makes it a whole lot smoother and easier to deal with than having to go a bunch of different steps itself.
Yeah. So what Docker actually did here is this tool that they built that runs on top of a Mac, it uses the native virtualization hypervisor stack that's on OS X to implement a virtual machine to run a Linux host to host your Docker containers natively.
Yeah.
On the Windows side, it was even a little bit more challenging because you had to disable Hyper-V in order to be able to run containers, to use VirtualBox and stuff. And there was a weird kind of finicky thing with that. The Windows tool that you download to do this exact same thing is built on top of Hyper-V. So it's much more native. So the implementation for Mac and the implementation of Windows are both very different. But what's cool about it is that for a developer's point of view, it's transparent. You don't really care. You don't care that, they had to write Microsoft Office in one language to run on Windows, and they had to do it in a totally different way to get it to run on OS X. Right now, this thing is in beta. It's a private beta, so you have to apply to get into it. They're slowly bringing people on board, but man, this is going to make development, especially in the container space, so much nicer, and not having to spin up virtual machines using VirtualBox or Hyper-V and managing those different hosts and everything for us.
Yeah, exactly. Anything we can do to make it, or anything that can be done to make it easier for developers to get up and running gets my vote, because it's a simple install and you're up and running and playing with the actual technology you should be building, as opposed to cobbling things together just to get your dev box running.
Absolutely. So cool. That's our a bit of Azure and Docker Machine and Mesosphere news there. I've got a little bit of news actually around the Google Cloud as well here.
Ooh, what are they up to?
So first of all, we've already seen that they've already gotten a couple big wins lately by getting Spotify, and they also picked up, I'm blanking on who the other one was a couple weeks ago. But they got two big customers that have switched over and jumped on the Google Cloud platform for their primary deployments. Another one that just recently picked up, though, is that they announced this past week that Home Depot is moving a lot of their infrastructure over to the Google Cloud platform. So this person that they hired, I think her name was Diane Green, they picked her. She joined Google maybe 4 or 5 months ago. She has been, obviously, the fruit of her labor is actually coming out, where we're seeing a ton of big companies, big organizations switching over and replatforming right on top of the Google Cloud platform. So those are big wins by Google.
Yeah, that's more moves in the space, right? Adding to the names.
Absolutely. And then another thing too that Google did this past week, they announced, is a really interesting little tool here. And unfortunately it's a bit of a slight to Microsoft, but they announced this thing called Stackdriver. And so there's a couple different aspects to this. What Stackdriver is it's a collection of a couple different things, like alerting, tracing, logging, error reporting, uptime monitoring, a debugger. All this stuff is centered around a bunch of different dashboards, or visualized through a bunch of different dashboards. And what it allows you to do is to not only monitor your virtual machines and your applications in the Google Cloud platform, but it also allows you from the Google Cloud platform to also monitor your AWS investments as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so you see it all as one full-up dashboard. Now, it only works for Google platform, and it only works for AWS. It does not include Azure, which a bit disappointing, but it's interesting to see that Google's put this out there for a nice little, one all-up kind of a thing. When you usually see something like this coming from the ISV market to provide a value add. One of the things this does do, though, is that it's, as one of the articles that we flipped into Flipboard, is that it does bring up an inconvenient truth that companies are not usually just investing on one cloud platform. They're commonly looking to invest in one or two, or maybe even 3 different cloud platforms. But it also shows the compatibility between the different cloud platforms. So they're not only are they commodities to us, but we're being able to treat them as commodities to be able to switch between different utilities, right? Or I guess not only are they utilities to us, but it's very easy to switch utilities and treat them more like commodities.
Yeah, that's what I really like about Docker Cloud, and how you can deploy and manage containers across different providers. Not that I'm doing that right now, but at least to know that it's an option, right? And so tools like this, I think, will really help with that when they're a little bit more cloud agnostic, and and then you're clicking your deployment cloud, I should say, based on its merits, not just on some of your fundamental sort of plumbing of your apps and monitoring and management of them.
Yeah, and it really gives you nice tolerance there too, or high availability tolerance, to be able to, we've seen where Google or where AWS or Azure have just had complete system-wide outages. And it's nice to be able to see that, it's very easy to deploy in different environments. Maybe that there's a data center that Google has that Microsoft doesn't have, or vice versa, in a specific region that is interesting to you. So yeah, it's a cool little option there. So big news by Google pushing out this new Stackdriver and also picking up yet another partner.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
So, hey, and the last thing we had there was, I think we might have actually seen a little bit of news from Build, but it came a little early. Did you get the same kind of feel?
Yeah. Can anybody say premature marketing.
The Office 365 is giving us our first announcement from Build. Do you want to cover this one?
Yeah, sure. So they've announced that Office 365, the connectors are available for groups, right? For 365 groups. So these are the ability for you to connect different services into Office 365. So for example, like Zendesk, for example, when somebody logs a ticket, for example, in Zendesk, being able to have that show up in your Office 365 group and vice versa. And they've got a whole bunch of these services that I think they say in the article, like 50 plus, is it 50 plus services are available as connectors on day one? I'm guessing, I know we're going to see a lot more news about this in probably the next couple of days. So we'll cover it again. But things like MailChimp, Twitter, Trello, GitHub, Zendesk, Wunderlist, Bing, Salesforce. I mean, the list goes on. And the idea is that you'll be able to integrate these two together so that you get relevant stuff pop up in context in your team's Office 365 group at the right time from those services. So this is kind of like integrations in Slack, if you're familiar with those, how you could say connect, what's a good example? Like a GitHub check-in into Slack or something like that, or when a new Trello card is added, have it pop up in Slack. In this case, it would pop up into your Office 365 group for your particular team or project or what have you, to give you that information from those other services. So it's a nice start. And the news article doesn't really, at least I missed it, it doesn't really cover that you can go and build these things yourself as well. And again, I haven't looked into that in any great detail, but I'm assuming we're going to hear more about that at Build to be able to build interesting connectors. And so although it launches with a whole bunch of like what I would call consumer-y type services, or not really consumer, but sort of small business or not really enterprise services, I guess, other than Salesforce. It'll be interesting to see what enterprises build these connectors, for different systems and things like that. Like I could imagine there's connectors for Dynamics, for another type of CRM stuff, for ERP systems, SAP, that sort of stuff. Connect them in as well as the shiny, well-known ones on the outside world like Salesforce and Twitter and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting, or it's definitely a nice add to the Office 365 platform. And we've seen how one of the things that is causing Slack to just explode is in a good way, is all the integrations you can have with these different outside partners. So it'll be interesting to see how people adopt these. It'll be interesting to see some of the custom stuff that people build from these, because I'm agreed from the article. I didn't walk away with much in the sense that you could build these on your own, but I know that there is an API. I know that there is a developer story for you to be able to build your own connectors to where you could have, your own stuff, like not only just going through and having your own integrations, but think about like if you had a group set up for marketing stuff for your company, whenever you saw a tweet that mentioned your company, you could actually have that get posted straight into your marketing group. So for more visibility internally, you could see people talking about it, or whenever you're mentioned on Twitter, or whenever you're mentioned, say, even on a specific Slack channel, you could set up, create different connectors that actually percolate that content, and bring it into your group so that the rest of your team has visibility into that. And maybe it's something that you can act on. Maybe that also triggers a task to get created to say, maybe someone needs to go follow up to that tweet on a personal level and not just from, like, say, a company account. So
exactly, yeah.
There's a lot of cool things you could do with this.
It'd be cool to see what people come up with, right? It's a really nice piece of integration. So
absolutely
looking forward to seeing what people do.
Yeah, really cool stuff. So hopefully we'll see more about that and see some additional updates from the Office 365 guys and at Build. So
yeah. So
speaking of Build,
yes.
So you're going down to Build. It's the big Microsoft developer show for over the next 3 days. So let me ask you this, why exactly are you going to Build this year? Do you have a specific reason or agenda in mind?
Well, we're building a lot on Azure, and I'm definitely interested in hearing all about the latest developments in the Azure landscape, and especially around Docker. There's some other goodness around other things that Microsoft are doing just in the general developer space that I want to get hands-on with. And honestly, like, you can get all this news sitting from your desk, right? Like there's really not much of a reason to go in person if you're very disciplined about getting the news. But for me, I love getting immersed, and I don't carve out the time if I don't go, to watch sessions and to get hands-on in labs and things like that. So for me, it's getting into the space and immersed is a big deal, because otherwise I just don't carve it. I have all the best intentions to carve out the time to go watch these things, like sessions and learn about particular topics, but I never follow through because I always get sidetracked with other stuff. So for me, it's about getting there and getting immersed in it for a couple of days. But definitely in the Azure space is primarily what I'm going for.
Gotcha. So are there specific things that you're... Now, when I ask you this, I'm not asking you to predict anything, but do you have specific things that you're hoping to see or news that you're hoping to hear come out of build this week?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things I'd really like to see them. I don't know if they're going to announce it, but at least show direction on. And I'd go back to that container as a service and integration with Docker in the cloud. I'd love to see what's next for ACS beyond what's currently in the GA release, and get really serious about containers in Azure.
Azure Container Service.
Azure Container Service, yep. And the integration with Docker there. And then the other thing is they've got a lot of different PaaS type offerings and things in Azure. And I'd love to hear more about, where that's going to go next. Like, is it going to be an all-in-one thing? Is there, are they going to try and bring a whole lot of those things together? Are they doubling down on IaaS versus PaaS, or are they going to swing back to the PaaS world? And so I think it's just a bit more direction on that stuff. Not so much. I've got lots of asks around features, of course, but for me, it's more about direction setting more than anything else, and where they're going to head next over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'm going to echo you on the whole concept of like containers as a service and the future direction that they have and improvements they've made around the Azure Container Service, around ACS. I'm also very interested to hear about their progress, and maybe this is too strong a thing to expect, but I'm really hoping to see a RTM or a GA date for Windows Server 2016, which effectively will bring Windows containers.
That's a very good point, actually. That's Windows containers are going to be a really interesting development. I don't think the Windows development world's really taken enough notice of this yet.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think a lot of thought leaders have, and personally, for me, it's not as interesting because I'm not so much working on technologies that are tied just to Windows. So I don't need a Windows container, but I want to see Windows containers to come to the Windows ecosystem, to come to the Microsoft ecosystem, and to give people those options. Which one do you want to use?
Definitely.
I don't really care either way there. The other one that I'm really hoping to see, I'm really eager to see, is improvements and investments around Azure AD. Specifically, I really want to see Azure AD make it to the current production Azure Management Portal.
Correct. Well, gosh, that's a whole hornet's nest, isn't it?
It is.
I really don't like the new portal, and that's just a personal thing. Like, I just find it a bit clunky and painful to navigate around, and I don't think they're going to announce they're working on a new one, but I kind of wish they would. Not if it takes as long as the last one.
Yeah, I at least want to see. I mean, I like the functionality that we have in the current portal. I don't like the usability to it. That's the thing that gets me, is the usability is kind of tough. I feel like I'm always diving deep into something and having to dive right back and come way back out to do anything inside the existing portal. But I mean, it's fine. It is what it is. I really just want to see. I want to be out of the situation I'm in now, where I'm forced to use two different portals in order to do things that I want to do inside of Azure. It's frustrating to go deal with the Azure Management Portal, the blue and white version, compared to the primarily black version with the blades for AD. But I also want to see what improvements that they have around Azure AD. I saw Vittorio has a session around kind of like future directions and stuff like that coming soon.
I have that on my calendar.
Yeah, that's one I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, especially around the app model v2 for Azure AD authentication for a developer and things. I want to learn more about and keep an eye on. So that'll be good.
Yeah, and then just to echo some of the stuff you said too, I'm also keenly interested in anything specific features, but I'm love to see more direction of where Visual Studio Code is going. I'd love to see more direction on where they're going with .NET Core and the cross-platform version of .NET Core, and hopefully see I would expect. I'll be a little surprised if we don't see an RTM date or an RTM release of that this week.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the session list, there is going to be a massive focus on universal apps. And so apps that you build once or build a great big part of once anyway, and run on Windows, phone, desktop, obviously part of Windows, tablets, and Xbox as well.
Yeah.
And then the second big area of focus is there are a lot of sessions on HoloLens.
Yeah.
So the developer preview for HoloLens ships real soon, like in the next day or two. The unit starts shipping, I think. And there are a lot of sessions on HoloLens development that are going on. So I'm keen to learn a little bit more about that because it's definitely not a topic I've looked at yet, about how the development model for it works and things. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the news over the next few days is going to be very heavy on Windows apps, HoloLens, and Azure, obviously. But also there's going to be some Office and Office 365 news in there around connectors, the Microsoft Graph improvements, things like that are a big deal for us personally, but also for companies that use Office 365 and things like that. So, but I don't think they are going to be the large center of gravity this year.
No, I don't think so either. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So it's going to be a fun event. We will report from there on latest news and what's going on at Build. So if you can't make it, keep an eye out on your podcast app for sort of daily updates. We're going to get those done on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we're going to do a wrap-up show probably the following week, I think, on a bit more in-depth about each of the announcements and what the reaction to them has been and things like that to dive into them in a bit more detail. So definitely stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, I've got like you said about the whole, you have great intentions of seeing all these different sessions and content and stuff, things you're interested in. I've got time on Friday afternoon actually carved out to go grab a bunch of sessions and download them put them on my tablet. As I've got 2 cross-country flights coming up, one on Saturday and then flying back east on Wednesday, back and forth to Vegas for work, not for party. Looking forward to watching a bunch of that stuff then. So
yeah, and if we have podcast listeners that are at Build, keep an eye out for me. I'd love to touch base with you and meet a few of you. So if you're around, just definitely reach out and let me know.
I see you're wearing your red picnic table cloth shirt today.
I am.
Hey, it's all good, man. If I was at Build, I have a shirt that looks almost the exact same, so it would work out perfect.
I might, look for a red checkered shirt. There you go. A short sleeve red checker shirt. I'll wear that. I might start smelling on Friday, so keep your distance. But
nah, man, it's a bunch of developers. They're all used to it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's Moscone West in general, right? During Build, it's going to be a bunch of BO. So, yeah.
I don't think you're going to see a bunch of developers converging on San Francisco this week in the Moscone Center to try and pick up an attractive person of your persuasion.
It's all about the swag. Got to get the swag.
Yeah. Last year I was bummed that I missed that cool mobility side or the swag with all the all the microcontroller stuff.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's there's usually some good swag to be had there. So
cool. All right, man.
We will see. All right. Well, let me know if you're going to Build.
Absolutely. So we will talk to everybody hopefully later this week, and tune into the keynotes.
Tune into the news. Yeah, right. Awesome. We'll catch you then.
Safe trip, CJ.
Cheers.
If you have a question for us, go to microsoftcloudshow.com/questions, where you can submit it as text or record it as a WAV or an MP3 file and provide a link so that we can play your question on the show. Our theme music is an excerpt from Evaporated Eric by Monk Turner, used under Creative Commons. You can subscribe to us in iTunes by searching for the Microsoft Cloud Show or via RSS at microsoftcloudshow.com, where you'll also find a full transcript and show notes of each episode. You can find us on Facebook searching for the Microsoft Cloud Show or on Twitter at MS Cloud Show. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.